What's going on, everybody? Today I want to talk a little bit about the Battlegrounds. The first beta for it just concluded yesterday. No longer have access to it, which is why we're just going to take a look at some images from past streams. But I've got some thoughts swirling around up here that I'd like to share with you guys, and hopefully the Kabam devs are watching this video as well. I've already shared a lot of, feedback in private with them, things that I think are important to change for the eventual release of this mode, but I've got some additional thoughts up there that I haven't expressed at all to them as well. So let's get into it. There's going to be maybe like 3.5 categories that I want to cover in this video. The first just being the barrier to entry, which includes, costs, but it goes beyond costs. You'll see what I mean in a minute once we get into it. Then I want to talk about the scoring and what needs to be changed, and kind of a little bit of anti-cheat that coincides with that. That's that half category. And then finally, nodes going forward for the Battlegrounds, because I feel like a mode like this, you can really make the mode feel unique rather than just copying and pasting in a bunch of nodes from existing content, which can still be done to some extent, but I do think that there's room for some more interesting nodes for the Battlegrounds as well. So let's get into it. We're going to start with the biggest category, which is the barrier of entry. Like I said, this has to do with the costs to actually play the mode, but it goes beyond that. And what I mean by that is just, the kind of mental barriers to entry as well. Because you see, even just to play the mode, you have to have 30 champions in your deck. Now, MCOC, if we think about how many champs you need to cover literally every other area of the game, except for the arena, because the arena is like how many champs you got. But if we talk about every other area of the game, we've got 5 champs in the standard quest, which some of them can be synergies. There's no synergies in the Battlegrounds. But let's just say 5 champs in a regular quest, 3 champs in AQ, 3 champs in war attack, and then 5 champs on defense. So that's 16 total champs that will basically cover everything that you need in MCOC. You can make some alterations here and there. The deeper you get in the game, you can swap some champs out to cover bosses and things like that, right? So yeah, it's more than 16 champions, but for the most part, you can rely on about 16 champions. To even play one single match in the Battlegrounds, it's 30 champions. And if you've played other games that like card games, right? Because we are talking about like decks of champions here, right? So it's kind of comparable to card games where you have to throw in anywhere between like 30 and 60 cards into a deck. MCOC, it's far more challenging than that, in some ways at least. Because if you go, there's a thing called net decking, basically. If you go online, type into Google, deck for Magic the Gathering or decks for Hearthstone or whatever card game you're playing, a whole list will pop up. And generally, at least for like the online card games, it's not that difficult to, get whatever cards are needed, or, they might have recommendations for alterations if there are very expensive cards, things like that. And you just copy and paste, and then you're good to go. In MCOC, you can't do that. You have to play whatever hand the Crystal Gods dealt you, which means there's no copying. And of course, there will be online resources available. Cam has already made a couple of, tier lists, some early impression tier lists for the 2 node variations that we've experienced so far. But there are going to be, other node variations too. And also, you can't really just copy tier lists either. Playing a card, it's like a static action in a way. Yes, you have to know when to use it at the right time and stuff like that. But playing a champion is far different, because you have to know how these champions work. You have to gain, experience with the champs, otherwise they're not going to feel comfortable. You're going to get your ass kicked. So it's already like a huge barrier to entry just assembling the deck just to play one single match. And then once your deck is assembled, there is another mental hurdle to overcome, which is just the anxiety of queuing up for a player versus player match. Nobody wants to look, like a fool going up against another player. It's fine when you get your ass kicked by, some boss in a quest. No one can see it, right? And although no one should feel bad about losing to another player, it's bound to happen. It's just human nature. I don't really experience anxiety of hitting that ranked match button these days. But dude, when I was younger, man, I can't even tell. I was just sweating profusely during matches of like Warcraft 3. Just the anxiety, man. My heart rate would just be so elevated just to hit the button to actually queue up for a game. I couldn't bring myself to play more than a couple games a day, man. It was serious, like it was intense. So yeah, I've grown up since then. It doesn't really matter. I'll look like a fool all day, every day. I don't care at this point. But even when I was playing against Legacy, dude, I was feeling the nerves. I felt some butterflies, So there's a real anxiety to a player versus player mode, especially in a game like MCOC where it's not a PvP focused mode or game. I'm sorry. It's not like Fortnite, for example. It is player versus player. The end. Right? There's nothing else you could do. In MCOC, it's 90% PvE, even after Battlegrounds gets added. It's still 90% PvE. Players didn't sign up for this type of an experience. So there is this mental barrier to overcome. And then when you layer on top of that the 4 in-game currency costs to play the mode, people are going to just say, why bother? Right? The mode is going to be just doomed to fail from the start unless as many of these, barriers of entry are just eliminated. And you can't really eliminate the anxiety of queuing up for a match like this. You sort of can by allowing you to queue up against just like an AI opponent. I think that's something that they can do. For example, in a similar way that they have like the parry tutorial, the training grounds. If they had some sort of battleground simulation type of thing, yes, that would help. But at the end of the day, man, when you hit that ranked match, like you can't truly eliminate the anxiety there. So what you have to do is you have to eliminate all other costs. You see, in games like Fortnite, you don't actually have to pay anything to leap from the plane or whatever you do, But in MCOC, currently, like I said, there are 4 costs to it. That's just going to kill the mode. The first, you guys can see it over there. It's 30 questing energy just to queue up for a match. 30 questing energy that's competing with your energy needs to go through the monthly event quests and side quests and whatever else you're doing in the game. So there's that cost, right, which can go very quickly, 30 energy. You can play 2 matches before you have to pop a refill. Then the second cost is you can see that each individual champion in your deck, they have an energy to them as well. Now, I can't remember the exact timer, the refresh timer. I think it refreshes every 9 hours or something like that. It was bugged in the beta. It wasn't manually refreshing, so we did have to use units every single time to refresh them. But, I mean, it's ridiculous, dude. You have to spend 10 units to refresh each individual champion. So playing a match, like, oh my god, dude, the unit cost is just so high. And because it's there's a ranking system here, and I presume there's going to be rewards attached to however high you can rank, maybe different brackets or something like that. You can't really just risk throwing in your B team of champions, because then you'll lose the rating, and it'll be even harder to climb back and get that rating again. So you're actually losing out on rewards. So you'd have to be spending units on your champs to refresh them to play with your A team always. So that's the second cost, right, is refreshing your actual champions. The third cost is boosts. They actually work. You may not be aware of this because pretty much everyone that I was playing with or saw their streams, no one was boosting because no one wants to boost for a mode like this. It doesn't make any sense. But as it stands right now, you can apply boosts. You can apply the green health and attack boost, the regular attack boost, the regular health boost as well, similar to Alliance War, where you're popping these boosts. And I mean, for the competitive Alliance War players out there, let me ask you, does it feel optional to pop these boosts? It's optional if you're not, super competitive and you just want to participate just to get whatever rewards you can without using the boosts, and that's totally fine. That's a totally valid way of approaching that mode. But for anyone that actually wants to be competitive in mode like that, you have to boost. And I don't really have a problem per se with it in war. I think the boost should last the entire duration of war, but that's a topic for another video, a video that I've already made 1,000 times. So let's not go there. But boost in this solo competitive mode, where these matches they last like 8 minutes. At most, you know, it's ridiculous to be popping boost for that. It should be something that you can just pick up and play, and you're good to go. I mean, actually, for the competitive players, this is an important point too, where there are these, you know, costs to refresh your champions and to queue up and stuff like that. It usually takes a few like warm-up matches if you're truly competitive and you're going to be playing, you know, dozens of matches. Maybe not all at the same time, but you know, you'd want to play like 1 or 2 matches, get warmed up, and then play, you know, a string of matches once you're feeling good, and even just to get warmed up, like boom, you're having to pay units and refills to do that. Then the fourth cost, we're not done with the in-game cost. The fourth cost would be masteries. So right now, whatever mastery builds you're running, it's just there for everywhere in the game, right? So if you normally like to run these suicide masteries, maybe just turned them on to use certain champions in war or something like that, but then you want to play the Battlegrounds, you'd have to swap your masteries. And that is such a big deterrent. It's such a big barrier to entry of the mode, because imagine like while you're waiting for your alliance mates to take, you know, clear you in war or something like that. Maybe you're like, oh, okay, I'll just get a round in, one game of Battlegrounds in. But you can't really do that because, well, you got to swap your masteries, and then you got to swap back for war, and it's just it's not good. I think masteries, they're interesting in that you kind of have to pick and choose. You can't get everything you want, and it kind of makes sense for your masteries to exist across the other areas of the game, albeit it's an outdated system and it should be adjusted to be more player friendly, just period, right? But for something like the Battlegrounds, you know, your mastery build, it should be tied to your deck. There should be an icon. I don't know where they'd put it, but somewhere in here, maybe one of these buttons up here that you click on, and it's masteries that are just for this deck. I also hope that there's going to be more than one deck slot, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. But basically, yeah, those are the 4 costs. So the 30 energy to queue up, 10 units every time your champions are out of energy, which, by the way, you know, someone I'm sure is thinking, well, just play when your champions refresh naturally. I don't want to play when Kabam says it's okay to play. I want to play on my own time. Otherwise, I mean, I don't want to play at all. I want to just not think about it and just say, oh, I feel like playing right now. Let's play. It's different than other areas of the game in that sense, because this is just a pickup and, you know, 5 to 8 minutes match. You're in, you're out. That's it. Kill a little bit of time. Have some fun. But okay, so yeah, the 30 energy to queue up, the 10 units to refresh your champions, the boosts, and masteries. Those are like the 4 currency costs on top of the already daunting task of assembling a deck and overcoming the anxiety of just queuing up for a ranked match. And we haven't even talked about the, you know, the cost of building a roster over potentially years. A lot of us have been playing this game for years. That's the fun side of things, and that's the side that Kabam should continue to monetize. That's fine. But they shouldn't be trying to, you know, attach these little costs to all these other areas of Battlegrounds. Other ways that they can monetize the mode, if they want to go beyond that, is you know, things. Frojo mentioned some sort of battle pass type system where you get some bonuses, but nothing that, you know, would prevent someone who didn't have the battle pass from playing competitively. I wouldn't mind necessarily if you wanted more than one deck, if you had to unlock that with some units or something like that. I wouldn't mind that. I think that would be fair. Sure, they could just give it away for free, but I wouldn't mind unlocking different decks that way. By the way, playing non-ranked matches, just if you wanted to queue up against a friend, that is going to be free to do, which is nice, and that'll be good for like community-made tournaments and stuff like that. But from past experience playing other games, those, you know, friendly matches are not going to be anywhere near as popular as just playing an actual ranked match. So it'll be good for tournaments, and that's, you know, and just queuing up against a buddy every now and again. But yeah, the actual ranked matches, they need to be free. So I think that covers most of what I want to talk about for barrier of entry for this mode. I know that was a lot, but it's very important. If the barrier of entry is not as low as it can possibly get, then no one is going to play Battlegrounds. You know, I mean, MCOC, it's a free-to-play game, right? They removed the barrier to entry to download MCOC, right? You're just taking that concept and applying it to the Battlegrounds. It's the reason why, you know, a lot of the PvP games out there are also free to play. You have to break down those barriers. Okay, anyway, let's move on to scoring a little bit here. So I want to show you guys one of just the tail end here of a match that was up against Happy McMuffins, and I was almost able to take down his Infinity Man, but not quite. Ran out of time. Check this out. He actually has, look at that. He resisted, which means he has stand your ground mastery active. Got slapped around a little bit. It wouldn't have mattered. I was still going to time out either way. He had about 7% health left, right? Now, let's take a little bit of a closer look at the scoring here. So, you could see that I actually gained some points for attacker health remaining. Now, early on in the beta, you got a 0. If you could not defeat the opponent, if you could not completely eliminate the opponent, you got a 0 for health remaining. And that didn't necessarily feel right. Right? Because I played fine enough in this match. It wasn't good enough to take him down, but I still had a lot of health remaining. So I feel like, yeah, just having some score at the end, that feels appropriate. But I think that should be adjusted. And getting the scoring right is tough, so I'm not going to go into a lot of details here, but here's what I think needs to happen. First off, you can see here, it's 30,000 points in total that you'd get if you finish with a full yellow bar, 100% health. I think that should be cut back to 15,000 maximum points based on your current health, and then just hit that with a multiplier. So 15,000 maximum points, and if you don't take down the opponent, like in my case here, it would just be a 1x multiplier. And then if you do take down the opponent, it's a 2x multiplier. So you're still greatly incentivized to, you know, kill the opponent, because it'll double your score for you know, attacker health remaining, but you still get something, even if you're unable to kill the opponent. You'd still get, you know, score depending on how much health you have left over. So it's not an all or nothing sort of situation. But I also wouldn't really feel like it's fair if, let's say Happy wasn't a god, and let's say he only finished his fight with like 30% health, and I finished with higher health. I would have won even without defeating the opponent. In comparison, so that wouldn't necessarily be right. So I think just giving it a 1x multiplier if you can't kill the opponent, and a 2x multiplier if you can, I think that's a good way to approach that scoring. By the way, here's just a little brief talk about anti-cheating. I'm not talking about any sort of anti-cheating detection or piloting, nothing like that. What I'm talking about is like pausing the match. So here's what I think, guys. If you pause the match because the opponent has their special 3 and stuff like that, you guys know the routine. If you play Alliance Quest, you pause the match, you wait for the time to tick, and I guess the AI didn't have time to throw that. I guess I live to fight another day. You know, that whole thing. That's fine. It's a PvE mode. Who cares, right? But in something like a PvP mode, that's some BS right there. I think this is the way it needs to be handled. So if you pause the match for a legitimate reason, you know, and then you unpause the match and you're still able to take down the opponent, then you get to keep your score for health remaining. If you pause the match and you're unable to take down the opponent, you get a 0 in this category. That's it. Now, there might still be some times where you legitimately pause and, you weren't just trying to game the system, but so what? I mean, it's an online game, right? Get used to it. This is nothing new. It's an online game. You're not really supposed to be able to pause anyway. It's a 5 to 8 minute total match. If you have to pause for an emergency, understandable. Just take the L. It would stop cheating. That's way more important. Protecting the person that is playing fairly is more important than protecting someone that very rare instances would have an emergency come up and they'd still have a chance of winning. Like, no, who cares? Just take the L. It's an emergency. Fine. Play again. Queue up another match later on. It's just some rating that you lost. Not a big deal. So that's how that would need to work. Okay, the last thing that I want to talk about real quick is just the nodes themselves. So the nodes in the Battlegrounds, I don't know if I showed them in this particular stream that I was in, but if you click this button, it shows the nodes, and I can't click it right now, of course, but they were fine. They weren't anything too crazy, which I think is good. I don't think the nodes should become too crazy. I think it should be fairly simple. That way it doesn't eliminate half the champs in your deck that are just unplayable. If it was like, oh, every single one of your champs needs to be bleed immune or something like that. Like, no, silly, right? It'd be ridiculous. But here's what I think needs to happen to keep things interesting while having nodes that are kind of toned down. Again, it kind of has to do with the barrier of entry to the mode as well. Keep the nodes kind of tame, but you want to make them interesting in some way. So here's my proposal on how to do that. Enrage timers, soft enrage timers. Things that as time goes on in the match, maybe the opponent's able to do a little bit more damage, or it could actually be sort of a reverse enrage as well, where you're actually gaining more power. So, I mean, timing out, it's not fun. It's a serious, legitimate strategy to try to force your opponent into a timeout situation. But I also think it's fun if, as the match goes on, some of the variations, they could actually make you stronger as well. So every second that goes by, maybe you gain a passive fury for X amount of attack, and it'd be a low amount of attack, but by the end of the match, you're hitting a little bit harder, and maybe you'll be able to, take down the defender, things like that. These sort of enrage timers or soft enrage timers, you can get really creative with them. You could, they could affect any sort of aspect of the game, any number of stats from attack, block proficiency, maybe putting a different, but I don't know if buffs would be good actually, because that would interact with the other champions. But it could even do something with the healing of these champs, where you never really want to put a heal block node in Battlegrounds, in my opinion. But you could do something that's kind of like a softer enraged version of heal block, where as time goes on, maybe your healing is just a little bit less effective and things like that. And that might sound really annoying if you think about the context of other areas of the game. But keep in mind, this is a 2-minute match. You don't need health to carry over to the next fight. You're not having to pay potions or revives or anything like that. It would just affect the scoring, and it would affect both players' scoring. But it would just be something, a little bit more interesting, without necessarily giving players an entire book to read and have to, have all these ridiculous nodes that are, so hard to remember exactly how they work and things like that. Just these softer enrage timers, or these timers, these buff timers on yourself, that as the match goes on, you become a little bit stronger. It can go both ways. So yeah, that's my ideas with nodes. Again, the idea is to keep the barrier of entry low by keeping the nodes fairly basic, which they were here. It was just a little bit of power gain for the opponent kind of thing. But then you can make them interesting by having these enraged timers. What you wouldn't want to do is something like the Summoner Showdown, where most of the matches ended in like 15 seconds because the opponent just skyrocketed to a special 3. You know, that's not really fun. So yeah, maybe a little bit of a power gain over time on yourself, even that could be fun. You know, things like that. But that's pretty much it. That's my thoughts on the Battlegrounds. It's a fun game mode, but Kabam has to make some serious changes to the barrier of entry, and then some minor other adjustments here or there that I talked about, and you know, other tweaks as time goes on. But that's kind of the main points I want to talk about. So that'll do it for this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.